When I proposed to my fiancée, Emily, I thought I was taking the first step toward a lifetime of happiness. We had been together for 3 years, and while our relationship had its ups and downs, I believed we truly loved each other. She said yes with tears in her eyes, hugging me so tightly I could barely breathe. It was one of the happiest moments of my life, until everything changed just a few days later. We were sitting in our apartment, going over wedding plans when she casually mentioned something that made my stomach drop. "So, now that we're engaged," she said, her voice light and sweet, "I think it would be really great if we could take care of my parents' debt before we start planning anything big." I paused, thinking I misheard her. "Take care of their debt?" I asked. She nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, it's only fair. They've struggled so much, and now that we're building a life together, it makes sense for us to help them out." Us? There was no us paying off her family's debts. This was the first time she had ever mentioned anything like this. If her parents were in serious trouble, I would have expected her to talk to me about it sooner, not drop it on me out of nowhere right after our engagement. "How much are we talking about?" I asked carefully. Emily grabbed her phone and scrolled for a moment before turning the screen to me. My stomach clenched. It was over $150,000. I blinked, trying to process what I was seeing. Credit cards, medical bills, personal loans. All of it stacked up to a staggering amount. "Emily," I said slowly, "this is a lot of money." She sighed, as if I was the one being difficult. "I know, but it's not that much in the grand scheme of things. You have a great job, and we have a future together. It's an investment in our family." I set my jaw, my pulse quickening. "This isn't our debt. It's your parents' debt. Why am I the one who's supposed to pay it?" She frowned, shifting uncomfortably. "Because you can pay it." That response hit me like a punch to the gut. Yes, I had worked hard to build a stable career. I had saved money, been careful with my finances, and planned for my future. But that didn't mean I was an open ATM for her family. "I get that you want to help them," I said, choosing my words carefully. "But this is a huge ask. Have they tried to handle it themselves? Have they looked into options for repayment?" Her face darkened. "You don't understand," she snapped. "They've done everything they can. My dad lost his job, my mom's health isn't great, and they're barely getting by. It's not fair for you to sit there and act like they haven't struggled." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "I'm not saying they haven't had a tough time. I'm just saying this isn't my responsibility." Her expression hardened. "Wow. So that's how it is? You're just going to let my family suffer?" I stared at her, feeling a cold wave of realization wash over me. This wasn't just a casual request. She expected this. She believed it was my duty, simply because I was financially stable. "Emily, this isn't about letting anyone suffer. This is about boundaries. We're not even married yet, and you're asking me to wipe out my savings for something that isn't my responsibility." She scoffed, shaking her head. "I can't believe how selfish you're being." Selfish. That word hit me harder than I expected. After everything I had done for her, after 3 years of supporting her dreams, standing by her through tough times, and now planning a future together, she had the audacity to call me selfish because I wasn't willing to put myself in financial jeopardy for her family. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. "If you really think I'm selfish for not paying off a debt I had no part in creating, then maybe we need to rethink some things." Her eyes widened. Are you threatening to call off the engagement?" I didn't answer right away, because for the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go through with this wedding anymore. Emily stared at me, her face a mixture of shock and frustration, as if she couldn't believe I would even suggest reconsidering our engagement. But how could I not? The way she had framed the entire conversation made it clear she saw this as an obligation, not a discussion. She folded her arms. "I can't believe you're acting like this. We're supposed to be a team. Marriage is about supporting each other, and that includes helping family when they're in need." I ran a hand through my hair, trying to stay calm. Marriage is about supporting each other. But that doesn't mean one person gets to make a financial decision this big without even asking the other. You didn't come to me and say, "Hey, my parents are in trouble."
Can we talk about ways to help?
You just assumed I'd pay off everything like it's my duty. Emily's lips pressed into a thin line. I thought you'd want to help. Helping and being forced into something are two very different things.
She scoffed.
Oh, please. You have the money. It wouldn't even affect your lifestyle that much. That was the moment my stomach truly dropped. It wasn't just that she expected me to help, it was the way she dismissed how much money this actually was, as if it were pocket change. I had worked years to build my financial stability. I had been careful, made sacrifices, and avoided reckless spending. And now, because I had been responsible, she believed I owed it to her family. I leaned forward, my voice lower now. I need to understand something, Emily. Did you agree to marry me? Or did you agree to marry what I can provide? She gasped, as if I had just slapped her. How dare you say that? I'm asking because it really feels like you see my bank account as part of the deal. You've never mentioned this before. Not once in 3 years. But now, suddenly, right after we get engaged, you expect me to take on 6 figures of debt for your family? Why now? Emily's face twisted with anger. Because I thought now that we're engaged, you'd finally understand what it means to be committed to me.
To my family.
Or did you think you were just marrying me and not the people who raised me? I blinked, taken aback by her tone. Emily, there's a huge difference between being part of a family and being responsible for all their financial problems.
She scoffed.
I don't understand why you're acting like this is some impossible thing. You literally can fix it. It's one payment and it's gone. Just like that. One payment. I repeated, laughing bitterly. Emily, do you realize what you're saying? That's our future. That's our house, our emergency fund, our ability to build a life together. And you expect me to just wipe it out before we even get started? She threw her hands up. It's just money. We'll make more. I stared at her, finally seeing something I had ignored for too long. Emily and I had always had different views on money, but I had never realized how deep those differences ran. I was careful, I planned, I saved. She spent freely, trusting that things would work out. It had never been an issue before because our finances had always been separate. But now that was changing. And suddenly, I was seeing just how dangerous that difference could be. I took a deep breath. Let me ask you this. If the roles were reversed, if my parents had $150,000 in debt and I expected you to pay it off, would you? She flinched. There it was. That brief, involuntary hesitation before she covered it up with an indignant look. That's different. Asterisk, how asterisk? I challenged. Because you make more, she shot back. You have the means to do it. You're not struggling. If I had your money, of course I'd help you. But I don't, so it's not the same. I let out a slow, humorless chuckle. So, because I've worked hard and built something for myself, I'm expected to just hand over a 6-figure check with no questions asked. She rolled her eyes. I knew you wouldn't understand. I shook my head, more disappointed than angry now. No, Emily. I do understand. You just don't like my answer. She crossed her arms again, her expression dark. So what? You're just going to let my family suffer? I sighed, standing up. I'm going to think about what this means for us. Because honestly, I don't know if I can marry someone who sees me as a solution to all her family's problems instead of a partner. Emily's mouth opened slightly, as if she wanted to say something, but for the first time, she had no comeback. I grabbed my keys and walked out the door. Because right now, I needed space. And for the first time, I wasn't sure I'd be coming back. I drove aimlessly for a while, my mind racing. The conversation with Emily kept playing over and over in my head, like a bad song I couldn't turn off. The way she had dismissed my concerns, the way she had made me feel like I was the bad guy for not handing over my savings, it was all too much. I pulled into a quiet parking lot and just sat there, staring at the steering wheel. Was I overreacting? Was this just a misunderstanding that we could work through? Or was this the kind of fundamental difference that could never be resolved? I had always known Emily and I had different attitudes about money, but I had never thought of her as entitled. She had always been a little careless with spending, sure, but I had chalked it up to a carefree personality. I never thought she saw my financial security as something she was owed. And the more I thought about it, the more things started falling into place. The expensive gifts she had hinted at over the years. The times she had joked, asterisk half joked, really asterisk, about me buying her a new car or taking her on lavish vacations. The way she never seemed to worry about savings because she knew I had enough. I had brushed all of that aside before. But now, looking at it with fresh eyes, I wasn't so sure I had been seeing the full picture. I needed advice. I called my best friend, Mark, who had known me since college. If anyone could give me a reality check, it was him. He picked up after the second ring. Yo, what's up? I exhaled. Dude, I think I might have made a huge mistake getting engaged. There was a pause. All right, he said carefully. Talk to me. I laid it all out for him. The debt, the demand, the way she had called me selfish for not immediately agreeing to pay it off. Mark listened quietly, not interrupting until I finished. Then he let out a low whistle. Man, that's bad. I sighed. I know. No, like that's really bad, he said. I mean, I always thought Emily was kind of high maintenance, but this is straight up gold digger behavior. That word made my stomach twist. Come on, man. She's not a gold digger. Really? Mark shot back. Because everything you just told me sounds like someone who saw your money as part of the deal. And she waited until after you proposed to drop this on you? That's not a coincidence, dude. That's a strategy. I rubbed my face. I don't know. Maybe she just panicked. Maybe she really does want to help her family and didn't know how to ask. Mark sighed. Look, I get wanting to help family. I do. But the way she did this? That wasn't asking. That was expecting. And when you said no, she called you selfish instead of trying to understand your side. I swallowed hard. So, what do I do? You already know what you have to do, Mark said. The question is, do you have the guts to do it? I stared out the windshield, feeling the weight of his words settle in my chest. Did I? I wasn't sure. But I knew I couldn't go back home to Emily without an answer. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to just let this go. I needed to test something first. I needed to see if this relationship was built on love or on what I could provide. And the only way to do that was to take money completely off the table. I woke up the next morning with a plan. If Emily truly loved me for me, then money wouldn't be the foundation of our relationship. But if she only saw me as a financial safety net, then what I was about to do would expose that. I went back home later that afternoon, determined to have a real conversation. Emily was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, but when she saw me, she immediately stood up. You just left, she said, her arms crossed. No call, no text. Do you even care how that made me feel? I sighed. Emily, I needed time to think. This isn't a small issue.
She scoffed.
It shouldn't be an issue at all. You either care about my family or you don't. I took a deep breath. I do care, but that doesn't mean I'm willing to destroy my financial future before we're even married. She rolled her eyes. Here we go again with your future. I ignored the comment and sat down. Look, I've been thinking a lot about our relationship, and I realized something. I don't want money to be a factor between us. Her eyes narrowed slightly. What does that mean? I looked her straight in the eye. It means I'm giving up my savings. Her face twitched. What? I've decided to put everything into a trust for our future, not for anyone else. I'll have just enough to pay for our wedding and get a modest home, but beyond that, we'll have to build from scratch. Together. Emily stared at me, completely silent. I continued. If we're going to get married, I want to know that we're in this as equals. No safety nets. No handouts. Just us, figuring things out together. Her lips parted slightly, as if she was about to say something, but then she closed her mouth. I could see her brain working, trying to process what I had just said. Then, after a long pause, she finally spoke. So, you're saying you're not paying off my family's debt? I shook my head.
No.
And I'm also saying that if we get married, we'll be starting fresh, without my money as a cushion. Her face went pale. That's insane. No, I said calmly. It's fair.
She took a step back.
So, let me get this straight. You have the money to fix this problem, but you won't? You'd rather let my family suffer just to what? Test me. I exhaled, feeling a deep sadness settle in my chest. Emily, if our relationship can't survive without my bank account, then we never had a real relationship to begin with. Her eyes flashed with anger. This is so manipulative. I can't believe you're doing this to me. I felt my heart sink.
To me.
Not to us, not to my family, not to our future. To her. That was all I needed to hear. I stood up, suddenly feeling lighter. I think we're done here. Her jaw dropped. Wait, what? I can't marry someone who only sees me as a solution to her problems, I said, my voice steady. I love you, Emily. Or at least I thought I did. But love isn't a transaction. She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. So, that's it? You're just walking away? I nodded.
Yeah.
I am. Her tears weren't from heartbreak. They were from losing. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was winning.